I, oh, we're recording already.
You all? Well, I was just saying hello to everybody, and I'm so excited to start this new season of Gotcha Groups. And I think you're going to see that what we've tried to do is we've taken what we thought were the things that worked from the past couple of seasons. Hey, Roseanne. From the past couple of seasons, and we've just combined those things, trying to always make them better. And first thing we want to say is thank you for being our people. Thank you for being the best of the best. Know that, you were very much chosen for a reason. You're people we can count on. You're people that we care about. You're people that we know other people know and respect. And, that's what it'll take to do a great job that we know y'all will do, coaching and overall facilitating and leading these calls. So what we want you to know, hey, Laurel, what we want you to know right off the bat is what the small group calls are going to look like this season. Okay, they're going to look a little different. And so what we're doing is we're taking skills that we used to have in Gotcha calls. We had skills and we had accountability. We're taking those skills out of these small groups, and those are going to be in our Be Bold calls. All right. Everybody's, has heard that. You've seen it on the calendar, and you're probably like, what is that? Those Be Bold calls we're going to get into in just a second, but they are going to be sales and team building skills that you all flagged on your surveys as things that you really wanted to know more about, you wanted to learn more about, you wanted to get better at. And there were 6 big things. That's going to be in our Be Bold call. Our Gotcha calls are going to start with a reflection on Cynthia's weekly Be Bold message. You all probably saw that in the newsletter. She's going to have a little 3 to 5 minute message based on the book. Had my book right here, Kate.
Selling Boldly by Alex something.
If you don't have this yet, get it. I haven't started reading mine yet, you guys, so don't worry, you're not behind. Haven't started reading either. But Cynthia is going to be referencing this. It's really fun for us to think about everyone in Gotcha groups in particular reading this together and focusing on this together. So there'll be a quote, an excerpt from that you'll start your Gotcha call with. And it might be something like just a quote. And then you all say, how does this relate to your cabbie business? What do you think? Simple. We'll provide that question, and the conversation is just going to go from there. And that's going to look like 5 minutes at the beginning of the call. After that, it's going to be all about accountability. This is the reporting space. And we'll show you specifics on that in just a second. Of course, I have a slide for you. But you also received an attachment, right, that looks like this with our little Be Bold action reporting. Okay. You all may have heard we're going to have some t-shirts that say Be Bold. So our little B is, you're going to hear more about him or her too in a minute. But it's all about being bold. You want this in front of you before every call. You want your ladies to have this in front of them, so they remember the order that they're going to report.
And we'll get to that in a minute.
We sure will. Go, Kate, go.
Awesome. Okay. So the role of the leader, that's all of you. One of the things we think is really going to be important this time, and this is after 2 seasons of testing and learning, is to assign a timekeeper. Because most of the call is going to be about reporting and accountability, it'll be really important that everybody gets about the same amount of time. And when this is spelled out to participants, that will hopefully mitigate a little bit of monopolizing. And we know about that, right? That just happens. And so, for instance, if you have X number of participants and you have, let's say 35 minutes, because you've done that piece that Beth just talked about with the Be Bold podcast reflection, you just divide out the number of participants by the minutes you have, and approximately every week, that's what people have. And I would remind them of that, or have the timekeeper do that. Maybe people take turns. Maybe somebody loves that official role. You get to decide. This will help the group. Oh, the role of you, the leader. You're going to help the group be accountable. You are a coach, not a cheerleader. And so one of the things that we think is really important to that end is taking bullet point notes each week on what actions they say they're going to take. Now, this is key because one of the things that I have found leading groups the last few seasons, and I fell victim to it as a leader, is sometimes people will go on and on about all the things they did, but they weren't the things they said they were going to do. And there's a reason for that, right? They're avoiding it, or it's hard, or whatever. And maybe they changed course for a very great reason, but then they need to explain that, right? So keeping track very briefly what they said they were going to do, so that you're aware and you can ask about that if they're diverging and going in a different direction when they're reporting. Also, facilitating ideas to achieve goals. You might find someone say, here's what I want to do this week, and they're kind of stuck. You can throw out an idea, and what will probably happen, quite frankly, is the group will. And that's even more magical, right? But that's going to take a little time to kind of get that mojo going, and you can model that without serving them a whole platter. I'm guilty of serving up a platter of actions where sometimes one action will suffice. Simple, less is more. And then allowing them to take it and own it and run with it. The other thing that we really would love to see is celebrating successes. This doesn't have to be official. It's when they're reporting and maybe they had an open house and one person came. You had someone come. And in reality, that they might be deflated, but helping them see why that's a success. And maybe the success is that they reached out to 20 people and now they have the opportunity to follow up with the 19 who didn't make it, right? That's a success right there. You put it out there. Now you can keep going. Communicating with us, Beth and myself, we would really like to know if somebody is falling off. If somebody isn't letting you know that they're not going to make it. Now, maybe somebody can't make it here and there. That's okay. I mean, it's ideal that they show up. They're putting this on their calendar. That's the stage we're going to set. But in reality, if somebody's just falling off, let us know because we'll want to strategize on that. We want to capture as many people and pull them back into the fold as best we can. And lastly, what we would love for you to do is to have a backup person. You could call it a co-facilitator, or maybe if somebody isn't really up to that, it could be the person who's just going to take it on a day that something comes up for you that's just unavoidable. And we just feel like that would be important. And if you're struggling with finding that person or nobody's up for it, let us know and we'll help you figure that out. Beth, take it away.
Yes. And that is a change. If you were a team growth facilitator, we had facilitators and co-facilitators last time. And Brenda and Michelle, that was like you guys, but like y'all are leading together. You're a little bit of a different thing, which is awesome. But for my groups, just make sure you have that backup person. I don't want anybody stuck and, sick or something, and they don't have someone to facilitate. I might be able to pinch hit once in a while, but I would really prefer if you would just find someone within your group, because I think you're going to find the paradigm is going to be so simple. Yeah. They can do it. They can pinch hit for you. So let's talk about your core communication skill as the leader. Okay. This is part of Sarah Grady's CTT, which she calls, there are certain ways that we communicate, and it's not just with words, right? I am very guilty of, I do not have a poker face. What I think and feel is all over my face. And sometimes that is to my detriment. Okay. So when you are in this role, you do have to be really careful about your body language. Like, oh my God, will she please stop talking? Okay. Right. And I'm not saying anybody's going to do that, but I see so many, I'm closed. Y'all know, this is me. Like, I'm not listening to you. I'm closed. Smiling, nodding. You're attentive, you're listening. When they say something you don't agree with, not frowning or going, I catch myself doing that. So just an awareness of things like that. And then let's get to the questions. That's your biggest thing. That is your biggest piece of communication with these women, is asking those good questions. We attached a list of those really good coaching questions. I will have those in front of me every call. You all, even those of us that have been coaching women for a long time, we need those. Fresh words are always good. You all know it's not to say you're going down the list. Oh, let me ask this one. Oh, I haven't asked this one yet. It's, no. And if you say every time, explain a little more to me, or could you describe that a little more, or tell me more about that, using what, when, where, how, describe, tell me more. To what do you attribute that? Beth Jones Shaw's favorite. To what do
That's
you
my favorite
that,
too.
right? And then acknowledging those responses that you're getting. I am guilty, you guys, of being like, okay, tick, tick, how much time is left? Okay, move on. And I realized I haven't even said, Terry, that was a breakthrough for you. And then move on, So acknowledging, awesome, you made a phone call, whatever it might be. Let's see, I think I hit all of that other than messages. Okay, this is an important one. And we know this, those of you that have children, we know this from working with our kids. When someone has said something during the paradigm, and they've mentioned something that they've been working on, you say back to them what you heard them say, because sometimes that's not what they meant at all, right? So you might say something like, okay, what I'm hearing you say is, right? Or just affirming what she said. Oh my gosh, I heard you say that your intention is to do this. Is that what you're saying? Just to make sure. It also kind of seals the deal for her, and she will be writing down as she writes down what she wants to work on. And if what you heard is not what she meant at all, she can clarify that for you. And just say that. Clarify that for us. Yeah.
All right. Well, and one thing I do want to say about that list of questions that was attached to the email for this call is that's kind of I don't want to call it the filler, but that's going to be that's going to be the mayonnaise and the cheese on the hamburger, on the cheeseburger. The cheeseburger itself is the paradigm. I hope that makes sense. My brain operates in a very visual way. But let's get into the participant role. And by the way, for your first call, we will serve up an agenda that simply has kind of housekeeping details and expectations so that exactly, we haven't done that yet. We'll probably pull it from last time. But 100% participation. We've all heard that many, many times. And I like to say, not only do they need to show up, because they picked this time, you guys. I want to say that till the cows come home. They picked this time. And we know that there was a little life that happened between the survey and when we reached out with the groups, which was 2 days ago. But chances are they don't have a show every single night or day that they said that they would do this group, right? So, find it out right away. Does anybody have any major conflicts? And then say, okay, from here on out, then this is, other than that date, this is on your calendar. We understand that because of the overlap time, but now this is on your calendar. And you're going to show up, and you're going to show up. Like, how are you showing up? You're going to participate. You're all in, okay? Showing up and showing up. And letting you know ahead of time if they're not going to be there, and not 5 minutes before, right? Because then that shows me it's an afterthought. They're not all in, and that's a conversation, which, by the way, we would be willing to have as well. I don't want you to think you have to be all heavy hitting, and we don't want to be heavy hitting either. But it's more like, is this something you really want? And if so, this is what it means. We would love them to record what actions they are going to take and be prepared with the data regarding those actions. In other words, not relying on you or their Cabby sisters to remind them what they said they'd do. I've had that a lot on Gotcha calls off and on over the seasons. I just have. And so letting them know you are responsible for knowing and reporting on exactly what you said you do, because that's what accountability is. Also wanted to let you know that we will make sure you have the paradigm. I guess we've already done that in the attachment to the email, and the open-ended questions and expectations for participants. So the expectations are coming. You may or may not have noticed, we purposely emailed you and your participants together, so they all got the paradigm as well, so that they can kind of start looking at it and getting used to it. So let's slide on into the paradigm. The cheeseburger, per se.
You're so cheesy. I love how you said, let's slide on in with a few slides. Did you even gather that?
And or it could be a cheeseburger slider. I think I'm hungry.
Slider. It could. Okay.
You guys,
yeah.
Be very patient. So B-Bowl, Beth talked about that. We're really trying to, have that be, our messaging all over the place. And by the way, just a side note, because I believe just about everybody here is a leader, many of my team members have chosen bold as their word on their one-on-ones, which is really kind of fun. And they said, well, I'm not being very original. I said, that's okay, because this is something we all want to be thinking about. So as you are going through this with each person for their designated amount of time for the call, you're going to ask them to restate their goal every time. There's a power in that. They're owning it. It's public to the group that's there. It's reminding them that that is their goal, because tendencies are halfway through the season to go, do I really want that goal? And people have a choice to make, either keep going for it or adjust, but either way, the goal is the goal. And then the assess and discover piece. What action did you take? What did you do? What didn't you do? But really, most importantly, what did you discover through that action or inaction? Honestly, ladies, most women know. They can articulate that. But this would be a great place for some of those questions from the list Beth was talking about, to kind of slide them on in and really let it take hold. This is kind of a back and forth. And ultimately, we want her to discover. Sometimes she's not ready. She may not see it. She may not see the beauty in one person showing up at her open house, but you will help her through a series of questions. Activity plan. What will you take? What action will you take by next time? And next time could be next week, and we'll explain that in a minute, or it could be, I think, 3 weeks from then, or 2 weeks from then. And that will become very clear once the cadence gets going. And then intentionality. How are you going to make sure that that happens? Calendaring, having their husband ask them about it, having a sister on their team, they're going to do that open house together, whatever it is. So that's it. Just 4 simple steps. In the beginning, you'll probably have this up, but I do believe there's power in seeing everybody's faces big. So my thought is having everybody print it out so that they know where you're at in the process. There's no surprises. And you know what? After a couple of calls, many people would be able to guide others through this process or this paradigm. All right, Beth, why don't you hammer it home with the activities?
I sure will. I want to say a couple things here on this slide, just from doing these groups, like Kate mentioned, doing so many of them for several seasons. A few things under assess and discover. This is that space where you're not a cheerleader, right? That's that space where you're truly a coach. And that question, what did you discover, is a great question.
That's the best question ever.
And what often comes or has come is, well, I guess I'm avoiding it, or I think I'm afraid. Y'all, so often that is a great question. What did you discover? Because as Kate mentioned, they're going to rattle off action, 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 because that feels good. I did all of these things, but guess what? If all of those actions don't equal results, okay, what are you learning here? What are you discovering? All those things are really good and they're important. And maybe they're the road to what you want eventually. But what are you discovering along the way where maybe you need to tweak and adjust a little bit instead of keeping on with all the actions? The other thing about the activity plan that I think we really need to hit home is there will be most times, not most times, sometimes there'll be a week between these calls, and sometimes there'll be 2 weeks. And the calls when there are 2 weeks in between, I'm going to try to remind my ladies that you all, this is 2 weeks worth of actions and activities we're talking about, right? Or do you want to stretch yourself and maybe add something, right? Just kind of remembering that. So
I'll throw in one other thing.
yeah,
Being very specific, measurable. I think that's huge too. Well, I'm going to make some calls. That's not going to cut it. They need to know how many calls they're making. And it's really interesting. I mean, most women, we don't mean to be non-specific because we have every good intention. But when somebody says, okay, so how many calls will you make? They might pause and seem hesitant, but in reality, that's really helping them because then they can measure that. And I did want to say one other thing. Failure is not a bad thing. So if somebody, some of you were on the call right when we started, I think before we recorded, and I mentioned that for 2 seasons, I've been working with an assistant on an invite process where I can track and all the things because I'm managing that on my own with a lot of shows. And we just scrapped the whole thing. And I mean, like we scrapped it and I pay her. And I'm like, whoa, but guess what? I got the opportunity when I got off the phone with her this morning to think, I had to learn by doing it. I had to learn in the messy middle. I had to learn by the fact that I was avoiding it because it wasn't working for me, but I was beating myself up. Why can't I do this? I paid this person to come up with this system for me. It wasn't working for me. And my point is, that's not a fail. I needed to go through that. That's just one example. And I luckily figured that out for myself. But our gals are going to need help through questioning and some affirming and maybe re-guiding. That's not what I'm trying to think of.
reframing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Their thoughts as to why that fail was perfect and what they've learned. They might figure it out on their own, but you really can prompt that if you see it. And most of the time, we all see that in others before we can see it in ourselves. Okay, thank you, Beth.
Sure. So we talked about the activity plan. So let's talk about the formula. And here we have our little bee. And y'all, this is where our bees come in. And I kind of love this. I love an analogy. So if we're talking about be bold, think about bees and what they do. I mean, they are pollinating the world, right? And they're creating honey, which is something sustainable. Bees are a lot like us, if you really think about it, right? They're spreading the little cabbie pollen all over. And then some of those people stick and they are in our honeycomb and they're our team, right? So I know that may be a stretch, but think about it. So activities times effectiveness equals results. You all say this often. Say it often. Because if they're going on and on with activities, it might be time for you to say, okay, Kate, I'm putting on my coaching hat. I say that sometimes because it makes me feel better, especially when it's people that are my dear friends that I feel a little funny coaching them. You all know what I'm talking about. We're in these groups with people that we love and they're our friends, and we don't want to sound like holier than thou or something. So saying something like, I'm going to put my coaching hat on for a minute, because that activity you're talking about, I've heard you say you're going to do that oftentimes. Has that been effective? Are you getting results from that? What are those results? Activities times effectiveness equals results. If your activities aren't effective, you go back and you think, okay, maybe we have an effectiveness issue here. There can also be an activities issue. Maybe they're not doing enough to where they're not getting results, right? And that's an activity issue. Okay, I heard you say you've been away from your business for 2 weeks, right? Ooh, I think we have an activity issue here. Let's get back in the saddle, back on the saddle. So give yourself permission to use that and to put your coaching hat on. Lastly, more bees. Okay, I love this. And this came from Sarah also. We behave our way to results. The goal remains the same, but the activities change over the course of the season. We behave our way to results. You guys, I'm going to stop sharing there because this is something that I've been, you know how things just come to you and you're like, oh my gosh, that is so it. Like Kate's right now is less is more, you know, like really, really simplify. The thing that's been like knocking me in the face the last month, I would say, are habits or the way we behave. Right. And so what I want to start thinking about, what are my daily cabbie habits? Right. We all have habits when we wake up in the morning. Here's what we do, you know, and we could all list what that routine looks like. But helping these women see that if they want to hit the goals that they have said they want to hit, right? Are you touching that goal daily or doing something, taking some action every day? Now we can all talk about, oh, I don't work on the weekend. Okay, don't get caught in the that, right? But I think if we're really, really honest with ourselves, we might realize that we have 15 to 30 minutes every single day to work on our goals. If we really, really believe that we behave our way to results, because I completely believe that's true. And that you don't change your goal, right? You don't change your goal. You change the things you do towards that goal. These women that are in these groups, you all, they're all in. They are all in. We have 33% of our organization are in gotcha groups. That's amazing. You might be saying, okay, where are the other, do the math, 67%? They're still doing things. I mean, we have women in other groups that are still doing things, but these women are all in for small group accountability. So we can own that and we can help them own that. That's all I have.
All right. So Beth, I'll go ahead and introduce kind of how this call series is going to look.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we'll just flip it and that's all good.
Great.
So it's going to look a little different, and to be perfectly transparent, it was like a amalgamation. I love trying to use big words. I don't even think I did that correctly, but of making things simple, using what is already out there for us, some of which is new, and marrying it with gotcha so that there's a series, there's a cadence that's going to make sense to people. And so there's 2 gotcha calls a month. They are back to back. And for the most part, they're the last 2 weeks of the month. It doesn't always land that way, which is why we listed out the dates because of the call weeks, because of holidays, things like that. The first 2 calls in the month are large group calls or training calls. One is the all stylist training by the Cabby Home Office. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's not a gotcha call. We're just saying that's the series that we want all stylists who are in gotcha to follow, because those calls, the all stylist training, are for just those people, all stylists in the whole company. And you can see the calendar in both my Cabby and the Mertensmeyer calendar for the dates for those. The second call that is a training call and a large group call is the Mertensmeyer Be Bold call. And this is where gotcha group leaders, participants, and all Mertensmeyer on Fire stylists are invited. This is going to be a training call. There will definitely be something from the book at the beginning, I'm sure. It'll be a 45-minute call, and the content, as Beth mentioned earlier, is going to be focused on what the whole organization said they needed the most for the top 6 skills they either feel deficient in or they want more practice with, more meat to work with. And so we're really excited for that. And our first Be Bold call is Wednesday, August 16th. And you can see the rest of the dates on the Mertensmeyer calendar. But what we want you to know is our very first call is going to focus on booking shows from shows, which we think is critical for all growth, right? And then we move into the coaching calls. Beth, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Just what we talked about 2 weeks in a row, 45 minutes each. So they were an hour for those of you that were in them last time. And this is coaching and accountability. That's all. That's what you are in charge of, for lack of better words. We're doing the rest. Be bold. You all don't have anything to facilitate in the Be Bold call.
Right. You just show up and learn and enjoy and contribute as possible.
And we absolutely hope that there'll be things in that Be Bold call that you might reference, that some of the people in your groups might reference, because obviously things like booking shows from shows and talking with prospects, those were two biggies that came up. Those are very pertinent to what we're all talking about. So that could definitely happen 2 weeks in a row, coaching and accountability, 45 minutes each. Gotcha calls are going to start the week of August 21st. And of course, then the next one, week of August 27th. The dates, we sent all those in your all's email, right? You all got the dates. Fabulous. I'm not going to go through those. One other quick thing I want to mention, because I did this yesterday, and I think Roseanne very sweetly reached out and was like, Beth, I want to do this right. I'm like, no, that's my fault. I didn't communicate that. So there will be times, especially right now, before we get our constant contact texting up and running. You all know that's going to be a piece and part of what we're doing with the newsletter. Our hope is that's just going to be an easy way for me to say, Facts and Figures is Thursday, bring a prospect, right? So you guys don't need to do any of that stuff. But until we get that up and running, there might be times where I will say to you, take this message and I'll do it for you. Take this message and drop it in a text to your group. So if you all wouldn't mind right now, put together a text group that's just you and your group. And there will also be things you'll see when what Kate and I sent you also had things like, okay, and this is all going to be in the agenda that we're going to send. And Kate, we haven't even really talked about this, but you all know we're flying the plane while we're creating it in a lot of ways. But you need to know, for instance, for team building, what's their team building goal? You might want to know how many members do they currently have on their team, because they could be close to like core team leader, right? And that'd be something.
Hey, Beth, I think what we should do, rather than go into those details right now, is come up with what the first call will look different, because it'll be expectations and also people stating things.
Well, exactly.
So we have to map that out.
Right, exactly. So just like I mentioned, you're going to be getting an agenda, but those things are going to be important things. So I didn't want you to have questions, because I know at least what I sent had some columns that were blank. Right now, all you have is the email address and the cell phone number. Those other things you'll be able to get on that first call. Okay.
That's an excellent point. And I also thought of two more things that I want to throw in. One is, when speaking with the people that I did for being a leader, I did not mention that you need to have a Zoom. So I'm hopeful that everybody has a Zoom account. If you don't, reach out to me on the side. I'm hopeful that Zoom still offers a free 45-minute account, but I'm not sure if they do. Does anybody know if that's the case? Because if you want more than 45 minutes, okay, good. Another reason to go to 45-minute calls. I love it. Yeah. And then the second thing I wanted to share is we are going to have monthly calls for you. And this season, those calls are really, truly going to be just coaching on coaching. That's pretty much it. Like really sharing what's working, what isn't working. Here's where I get stuck. Here's what I don't get. Like, I don't know what to do when she says this. And maybe we'll do some role playing. I see it as very organic. What questions you have, what's working, and a time and a place, although we'd love it at any time, to share stories of breakthroughs, of successes, because we're going to want to find ways to share that with the greater organization and to celebrate them. So we will definitely be having those I think it's every second, what day of the week is it today? Thursday at this time. And we will record. And we know it's challenging. To be in all transparency, there's only so many calls that we can offer in terms of what we're doing. And as much as we would love to provide an evening call as well, at this time, we're not.
Right. Right.
There is no soft way of saying it. It's just, that's just the way it is right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And questions. That's where we are. We've done a lot of talking.
As in, do you have questions like right now? Because that's all we have.
Will you put that slide back up with that quote from Sarah Grady, please?
Yes.
Roseanne, I was just going to ask the same question.
Oh, I love that, you guys. Such a good one, isn't it?
It is.
It's coming. It's always delayed a little bit.
Well, and I'm so happy.
About the bees.
Mhm.
I know.
Okay.
I had to read it several times before it really kind of sunk in. But it's a good one. Any other questions? Any other things you need from us? Michelle has her hand up.
Yes. Will we have a way of reporting and recording like Google Docs like we did last time, or Google Sheets, or that same method, or how will that work?
Thank you for asking, Michelle. You don't need to do any of that this season. We found that we weren't necessarily looking at it. Now, in the same vein, if it helps you to do it, do it. I mean, each week I'm taking notes, so I know that week who was on, right? Because I have their notes. But as far as reporting to us, no, you don't need to.
Unless it's, like you have something you want to share, I'm concerned about so-and-so, they're not showing up, or I'm really stuck about this situation. We certainly wouldn't want you to wait a month for this call. We would want you to reach out and say, hey, can you help me with this? Or I'd just like to discuss this with you. Please don't wait. But I mean, it's sort of like a save up. If it's a Monday and we're meeting on a Thursday and it's not urgent, you could cover it during the group call. I would just agree with Beth, like have a notebook that you just take attendance. Maybe you have the names on the front of the notebook, so you remember who to look for, depending on how big your group is. And then also just so you can take those notes, those bullet points, and really just bullet points, you guys. You don't need to be recording everything they say. Just here's what they say they're going to do. Maybe you jot something down for yourself, like fear. Fear is a big one, so that you can kind of utilize that thought as you go into your line of questioning. But less is more. We don't want you to have to track for our sake. Only communicate to us. Please do communicate to us if there's anything along those lines that I just mentioned.
Yeah. And if people aren't showing up, that's important. You all, for a lot of reasons. That's important. So for me, so old school, I have just a notebook. I have this in it, and I have my coaching questions in it. That's my gotcha notebook. Just simple. Just keep it simple. Send them your link. When you feel like you need to, text with them. And you all, honestly, you all can decide as a group, is there a different kind of accountability that you want to do outside of what you're doing? I mean, I know outside of what you're doing in the calls, I know our group loves our text stream. We're letting each other know when, hey, I've got a prospect. Can anybody get on with me and Beth? That is helpful. Bye, Brenda. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
One last thing I want to ask is does it make sense, the call cadence, the 2 big training calls and then the 2 smaller group gotcha calls? Okay. It took me a while to catch on to that.
I think it's going to be more impactful. I do. And I'm glad we're changing it.
Good. I think, just so y'all know, the overarching thing was, you all remember when we had team calls, and we were doing skill bites within those team calls. We tried that. Everybody really loved the skill bites. So this is that, but it's once a month. And a lot of the founder orgs are doing this and have been doing it. Just so you know, they're working on skills, because what we know is you can't do what you haven't been trained to do. Right? So if there's no training involved, people have a difficult time executing. So that's what this is.
We also, we struggled with marrying the skills with the accountability piece, and it's just hour, half hour, you know, and then it just, all of a sudden the angels started singing when we pulled skills out and kept it. And I think that personally, yeah, you got the paradigm, and it's important with the accountability piece, but there's going to be an organic magic to these calls. I believe the third season's the charm, where people are going to really connect. Over time, people will be vulnerable. I do want to say, if you're willing to be vulnerable yourself, and by the way, we'd love for you to participate, even though you're a leader, state your goal, do your own reporting, because perhaps through that process and being willing to be vulnerable through your own experience, you're modeling for them and setting the stage that this is a safe place for them to do that. And I believe wholeheartedly that's the magic of this call. It doesn't have to be done perfectly. Paradigm is important, but you know, you're going to get off kilter sometimes. That's okay. The connecting, the vulnerability, and the coaching versus cheerleading, and the questions, and letting them get to their conclusion as much as possible, is where the magic is.
Yeah. And just always remember, even when it's mid-season and people are starting to fall off, because they will.
Oh yeah.
They will. You know that. That's just real. And maybe they won't. Maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised. But
Yeah.
I mean, be bold, and when people are missing, text them right then and be like, hey, we're on the call. Hop on. Or afterwards, yeah. Or afterwards, we missed you. We need every brain. We need every head and heart. Yeah.
Beth, we have 1 minute and we're true to our word of 45 minutes.
Any other questions? Anything?
Beth, Kate, it just, so I understand, with the book Selling Boldly, like the intent is that everybody has come having read the latest chapter, like, no, just extra, like if the people want to read it kind of throughout the season.
Yeah, and I think Cynthia realizes, well, no, she realized some people read it, some people won't. That's why she's doing the little video clip. Those
Okay.
people that aren't reading, that'll give them something. And then we'll have a quote or an excerpt from it that we can springboard off of. And those people that are reading it are just going to get that much more.
Okay.
And at the beginning of the call, that's really just to get the big picture thinking going. So people kind of can see where they're fitting in, and some of those concepts that will actually help springboard some of those questions and conversations throughout the paradigm reporting. But yeah, absolutely. Cynthia knows, and we know that not everyone's going to read, or maybe you're like me and you read 1/3 of all books and then stop. That's what I do, but not on purpose. That's just what happens. But that's really the whole idea of the video. And so I would encourage people to watch it in the newsletter, to hop on the Be Bold calls, to make sure that they're doing the All Stylist trainings. I think that's going to provide a lot to be able to reference when you're helping people figure out their plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great question though, because you're all or nothing like me too, probably, right, Laura? Like, I got to read every word.
I know. Well, I just wanted, I got to catch up a little bit. So I just want to make sure I'm like filling in the dots, just a few dots that needed
Totally.
some
Yes.
clarification.
We're all in catch up mode right now.
Yeah.
And I am hopeful y'all are going to be on the rally tomorrow. Yeah. Rally. If you can make it.
Team building rally.
Team building rally.
Icon 500.
Yeah. So that'll be a fun call where we can just, we can be cheerleaders on that call. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, y'all. You're awesome. Thanks for everything.
Thanks, ladies.
Sorry I was late, ladies.
You're
All right.
fun.
Thank you.
I'm
Bye.
coming in hot. I'm trying to get back in the swing here.
Coming in hot.
Go, Jenny.
Got this. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.